Well, back by popular demand, we got Jack Koshick, and we're going to talk about Badfinger and all the other exciting adventures that you've been on. I got a lot of pictures that I want to show of you with pretty much every artist I could think of from every decade, from 70s till present. So we didn't talk about Metalfest the first time. So maybe can we go back into just where did the conception of that idea start from? And against all odds, how did you create the first and largest metal festival?
In North America.
Is it in the world or only North America?
Well, it was in the world. It was the first, alternative heavy metal festival. I mean, you had Castle Donington, which was more rock, not metal. When you're talking true metal, this was the first one in the world. This is the festival that all the others modeled themselves after. In fact, Sharon Osbourne and her assistant, Janae, came to Metalfest 10 in Milwaukee, and Janae, followed me around for the whole event and picked up pointers while Sharon was talking to some of the bands on the show. Ozfest came out the next year.
No coincidence there.
Yeah, modeled after my event. I got the idea, and I was doing heavy metal shows when metal came out. I mean, the first metal band I did was a group called Talus, featuring Billy Sheehan. Right around the same time I was working with Badfinger. I was the metal guy in Wisconsin. I was doing shows in Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, Madison, La Crosse, Green Bay, and I had a show at the Eagles Ballroom, 1984, with Slayer and Overkill. It did really well. And my assistant was a guy by the name of Rob Earl. And he made the comment, "Hey, Jack, wouldn't it be great if we did a show with all our favorite bands on it?" And that stuck in my head, and then that's how Metalfest was actually born. Rob, on the other hand, joined the military and has never been to one. Then in 1987, I was managing the band Trouble, and I had them on the King Diamond tour. I built Metalfest around King Diamond, around a King Diamond and Trouble show. And that was the start. We had 15 bands. We made a little money. It was but it was magical. And we ended up doing, I ended up doing 29 Metalfests around the country, 20 in the Milwaukee area and 9, San Bernardino, Tampa, New Jersey, San Antonio. We did the gamut. Not all of those made money. In fact, some of those lost a fortune for me, which really kind of sucked.
Live and learn. Had you done any work on festivals prior to Metalfest that you took with?
Yes. Okay. Oh yeah, I had gotten a job with a company called Festival Events, and we were the #1 festival producer in the world. And that was owned by Tom Drillius. That's where I cut my teeth, festival-wise. And Tommy and I eventually became roommates and best friends. I learned a lot from that guy. In fact, Tom in 1990 was Performance Magazine's Promoter of the Year. Now that's, worldwide. I don't mind saying I've had the best teachers anyone could ever ask for. Besides Tom Drillius, it was Ray Ranieri, Tony Macchi, Gordon Crow, Ron Gowdy, John Hall. They were all a big part of my life. Each one has a story, Tony Macchi hired me to help him book Festa Italiana for 30 years. He had a nightclub called Teddy's, which he let me book bands into. I've had a blessed career, 53 years in the business. I got to work on Broadway. Thank you, Gordon Crow. I was the general manager of Gordon Crow Productions. And Gordon put me out on the road with Passionate Dracula, starring Jose Greco. Gordon's partner, Michael White, was the producer of the Rocky Horror Show. For 9 years, I did all the bookings at the Rave Eagles Club in Milwaukee. I've done 5,000 shows. I worked with Sweet. I got him a record deal with MCA. Brian Conley and I had become very close friends. In fact, Brian taught my daughter Katie her first song, Rock and Roll Part 2, rock and roll, hey, rock and roll, rock and roll. He'd be bouncing her and she'd be singing rock and roll, hey.
So with Metalfest specifically, then you mentioned the way, you found this untapped
Mhm.
opportunity for metal at that scale, and then you expanded to different cities. Some worked, some didn't. Did you have any lessons learned or like growing pains that you can specifically recall?
Yeah, if I had it to do over again, I never would have taken it on the road. Yeah, I'd be a millionaire right now, just living the high life. Hindsight being perfect, wasn't a bad idea, just a little bit ahead of its time. Yeah, I lost 156,000 in Tampa. I mean, that was just that whole weekend was a kick in the shorts. Lost 156,000 in Tampa. Yeah, shortly before that, 96,000 in San Bernardino. Went to Irvington, New Jersey, which is a suburb of Newark. Lost 40 grand there, and then got to go home and 3 days later lose 77,000 on Offspring and Cypress Hill. So, you know, a less than spectacular week. I ended up just toughing it out and carrying on.
Did you ever say no to any specific shows or like kind of representing any bands or festivals?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Always saying no. My decisions were all based on what I can do at that time. I had opportunities to pick up other clients that would have, yeah, done well for me. But if I didn't have the wherewithal or didn't feel I could do the right job, I would have to pass. The things that made Metal Fest unique was, yeah, you could go and see the bands that you could only read about. They weren't touring. I would bring them in for one show and then they'd go home. As an added bonus, I mean, we'd do pro wrestling. So you'd see some of the current WWE superstars wrestling at the shows. And we'd have some porn stars there too. So wrestling and porn seemed to work out just fine. That's an ideal package.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nothing was off limits, I guess.
No, not back then. Before I knew it, every every town had a metal fest coming in, all modeled after mine.
Why do you think yours remained the most successful though? Was it because it was first or was there any other kind of,
Because it was first.
yeah, random?
Absolutely, because it was first. And I ended up selling it to my friend Jamie Josta a couple of years back, and he's got it coming back to Milwaukee in 2 weeks.
What was involved in your decision to sell it to him at that time? How did
Well, he was eager. I had received several offers to revive the event. I even thought about reviving it myself, but I'm getting up there in the years and didn't know if I had it in me. He would treat the brand right, and I am proud of him.
So I mean, I'd say that that's a huge part of your legacy on the whole music industry that you developed that. Did you have any kind of rules that they have to follow, or how will they kind of know that it stayed true to your original vision for Metal Fest?
Well, if I was doing the show, I would stick to my original vision. It was an extreme festival. It was an extreme music festival. Like my friend Andy Summers once said, the Woodstock of the underground. That's what Metal Fest became.
And did you always attend as a like? Did you?
Oh, I've been to everyone except for Jamie's.
Yeah.
When I left the rave, I took Metal Fest with me,
Hmm.
and I had a falling out with the family that owns the venue. Part of Jamie's condition on getting into the Eagles Ballroom to use it is, I can't be there.
Is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know you're important if that's contractually obligated.
Yeah, I worked for WWE for 9 years.
How did that come about?
Well, what happened was this: WCW was looking to come into Milwaukee. I had met Barry Fox and Zane Breslov were the two main promoters for WCW in this area, and Mike Lima was their point guy. And they hired me. Yeah, I worked for them for a couple of years. Now, my contracts with all of my clients, because I mean, I was doing WWE, the Rave Eagles Club, festival events, Dustin Diamond, all these things. I was doing at the same time. I was swamped. I ended up hiring a staff. Crusher and I were best buddies for like 10 years. If you don't know who the Crusher is Reggie Lazowski. He was the wrestler that made Milwaukee famous back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. He had over 10,000 matches. He was a world champion multiple times, both singles and tag team. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. Crush and I would go out on looking for places to do karaoke. If I didn't have a show going on, he'd get up there and sing Roll Out the Barrels, roll out the barrels. I remember once going to a bar that had advertised karaoke, but they didn't have Roll Out the Barrels. Some guy comes in with multicolored hair and spikes all over his face and starts hassling the bartender. And Crush looks at me and goes, Jack, I ain't never lost a bar fight. And he was 78 years old at that time.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah. I mean, the most impressive Crusher story I can tell you is that one night he did a show at the Rosemont Horizon, a tag team show. He tagged with Baron von Raschke. And it's the first time he wrestled the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal. Well, Hawk went and, Crusher was old school, so he never took bumps. Now, a bump is where you go flying through the air, and Crusher was, And Hawk did a belly-to-belly suplex on him without telling him that was going to happen, and it wrenched Crusher's back. So he gets back into the locker room, and Hawk and Animal are taking a shower, and Crush goes, "Where are those turkey necks?" And he goes walking into the shower room, locks the door behind him. Because now here's a guy who's got a 54-inch chest, 24-inch biceps, not an ounce of fat on him. He's just ripped. Hawk is on his knees begging for mercy. Yeah. And Crush ended up letting him be. I mean, Hawk starts crying.
And that was in the locker room. So in case wrestling is not fake.
Yeah. He wrenched his back, so Crusher lays down on the floor. This is at the Rosemont. And he gets up to find everybody had left. Dennis Hilgard, the promoter, everyone had left. So Crusher goes out. His Cadillac is sitting in the parking lot. He goes out the side door. He's walking to his car, and this guy gets in front of him and distracts him. Well, another guy behind him hits him over the back of the head with a pipe and tries to roll him. Well, Crusher gets so pissed off, he goes and he grabs the guy in front and just boom, just cold cocks him.
Oof.
Then turns around to the guy who hit him with the pipe, picks him up and throws him against the wall, and then picks up a soda machine and just throws it on him. Yeah. The cops come, and here's the guy who had the soda machine thrown on him, and his eyes have popped out of their sockets. So that fight was over.
Yeah, that's the closing bell for sure. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. And the cops ended up letting him go. I don't know if they arrested the other two. I know an ambulance had to be called. And I remember going to his house shortly before he ended up going to the hospital. 79 years old, and he goes, "Jack, spot me." Look. And he's benching, because he loved to work out. He's benching 315 pounds. I look at him, I go, "Crush, if your arms give out, we got a real problem here."
Yeah, we're going to need some help.
Yeah. Oh, no, he would go down to Grant Park and put a half barrel on each shoulder and go jogging. That's how he trained.
Yeah.
And he'd drink the beer on the way.
Wow.
Yeah. We've got a festival in South Milwaukee, where he's from.
Yeah.
At the end of this month, the 31st of May, 1st of June. And there's a bronze statue of him holding a barrel of beer on his shoulder.
That's awesome. That's like Paul Bunyan or something, to get a statue like that. It's like a myth,
right.
But you saw him do it.
Absolutely. More than once.
What do you think contributed to like the mainstream appeal of wrestling overall at that? Because you're right. I mean, it was kind of local, but with WWE, it's like a national sensation now.
Well, what happened was, wrestling used to be territorial. You had the WWE, which was owned by Vince McMahon Sr., Vince's dad. You had the AWA, which was owned by Vern Gagne, Smoky Mountain, which was owned by Jim Cornette. You had the NWA, which was owned by Jim Crockett. Right now, you've got dozens of independent wrestling companies around the country, but there were really like 5 or 6 that controlled the nation. And Vince McMahon started going around and cherry picking all the guys. Yeah, he went up to Vern Gagne and cherry picked Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And yeah, he'd go and he wouldn't buy the companies out. He would grab the talent and steal it, take it over to his company, which became WWF after he bought WWF off his father. There was a battle going on between Vince McMahon Jr. and Ted Turner, who owned WCW. Now, I worked for both of them. I remember when Ted Turner calls Vince and tells him, "I'm going in the wrestling business." And next thing you know, you've got the Monday Night Wars going on between Nitro and Raw. For several years, WCW was bigger than WWF. I mean, WWF had run into problems over the steroid thing. I was not involved with the company at the time, but in 95, I came on board. I got hired. And I ended up working with WWF. Now, I wasn't the sole promoter, but I ended up working 15 different markets. One of my Milwaukee shows was King of the Ring, and Stone Cold Steve Austin beat Jake the Snake Roberts. Exiting the ring, he goes up to Jake the Snake, who's sitting there reading a Bible, by the way. He goes, "I don't know what it says on a little black book about John 3:16, but Austin 3:16 says, I just whooped your ass." And boom, that was the start of the Attitude Era. Yeah. And it was the Attitude Era that propelled professional wrestling to new heights.
Yeah. What did you think of the Andy Kaufman stuff at the time? Was that were people laughing about that, or was that offensive?
Well, that was just before me getting into it.
Okay.
But it was certainly made Jerry the King Lawler's career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe Vince Sr. passed on it and let us go to Smoky Mountain or Memphis Wrestling. Because that catapulted, I mean, the Andy Kaufman thing, the Cyndi Lauper angle, all those things just made it bigger. Girls just want to have fun,
Yeah, and it became much more theatrical. I think it borrowed some of that Mexican wrestling, the chop and the masks and everything a little bit.
What would happen is after a match would be done, Earl Hebner, myself, and Dave Bautista, who's now a huge movie star, would go to either a Hooters or a Buffalo Wild Wings, and we'd have some wings and suck some beers, And yeah, Dave told me that his dad owned a gym and his muscles were all natural and kind of like mine.
He really is the biggest guy I've seen in a long time.
He is.
Yeah.
What
was the point of convergence between the wrestling and metal? Was it always there? Is it punk and skateboarding where they just kind of played same people, or?
Well, your average metal fan is the same as your average wrestling fan, 17 to 30, 17 to 32. That's your demographic. That's who you shoot for. It was all just one big cross promotion.
Here.
Well, they shut me down at State Fair, yeah. But that was because, how do I say this without getting into a lawsuit?
We'll edit it so that you don't.
Good evening. A huge crowd showed up at the Odd Rock Cafe tonight, and suddenly things got out of hand.
Turned violent at a Southside Milwaukee nightclub. Police and a large group of young people got into a battle last night. 38 were arrested.
But you came back. It wasn't your last one, right? So
no. Yeah, there were 10 after that. More than that.
I've got a note here that you were on a breakfast cereal box.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
I was on a breakfast cereal box because it was great.
Okay, that's a spoiler. Oh, wow, there you are.
Yeah, there I am. And here I am with Dustin Diamond.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's definitely collectible.
Here's one with just Dustin. Got invited over, and one thing led to another. Yeah. Battlespeak, Michigan.
What's the process been like of writing a book? Did you have like a diary or anything during your life, or is it difficult to go back now and try?
It's all in my mind. Yeah, we're about a third of the way done with the book and going to try and concentrate on it. Uh,
Did you ever get starstruck, or was there any particular act or kind of celebrity or anything that you felt more nervous around?
I've met almost everybody. I've met the Beatles. I mean, I could call Bo Diddley a friend. I could call Roger Hodgson from Supertramp a friend. Yeah, Marty Bellin from the Jefferson Airplane and Starship. We were good friends. The Badfinger guys. Alex Chilton,
What was he like?
very quirky, very cool. I remember one day asking Alex, "Why don't you sell any T-shirts at your shows?" He goes, "Well, Jack, I just can't see some guy walking around with a picture of me on his chest." I loved Alex. He was great. He was
What
great.
about Eric Carmen? You met him a couple times.
Yeah, I did some shows with Eric and the Raspberries on their reunion tour. The Raspberries and the Box Tops featuring Alex Chilton on the same show, and a Milwaukee band called Trolley. I would say of any show I've ever done, that was probably my dream show. And I've done a lot of big shows. I mean, I've done Green Day and
Did you ever do any Blink 182 shows?
a bunch.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, I did.
My first crossover with Badfinger and Blink 182 in a video. You really did it all.
I did a show. It was winter. I'll never forget Mitch Oakman, who's the agent for No Doubt, calls me and says, "Jack, I'm hung on a date here. Yeah, I need you to play Milwaukee. Trust me, it'll be the best $175 you ever spent." It was No Doubt, Blink 182, and the Bouncing Souls.
That was the 2004 tour, right? Was it or something around there?
Yeah.
Well, I have a picture of you and Gwen, so you definitely met her, right?
Oh, absolutely. I went bowling with Gwen.
Oh, wow. What was that like?
It was cool. I mean, yeah, she wasn't as popular then,
Yeah. Those were the ska days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those were the ska days. But, Blake Shelton, I worked with Blake Shelton several times.
What do you think of the modern, I don't know, the 21st century festivals of, Lollapalooza, Coachella, Outside Lands? Do you think it's kind of diverged from your vision for what they used to be?
Oh, totally, totally different. I mean, I never had that kind of money. I had investors who did have that kind of money, but, we were still learning. We're still figuring it out. If I had one wish, it would have been to charge $1 a ticket more than
Only one?
Oh yeah, because I did 5,000 shows. I mean,
Yeah.
how many hundreds of thousands of tickets were sold?
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably a couple million.
So the other modern dilemma that people are always up in arms about is all the secondhand market, StubHub, and all that. Did you have to deal with price gouging in those days in the same way?
It started while I was there, but was not real prevalent back then. I mean, guys were getting in trouble for it. Promoters were doing it. Yeah, I didn't begrudge anybody who was doing it. I mean, they really weren't taking food off my table. Some promoters say, well, they're taking food away from it. No, you're not taking food. I mean, they bought the tickets. They could get stuck with those tickets. I've seen some of these brokers get stuck with wads of tickets,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't see the promoter giving a refund on those.
You met Bono. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
What show was that for?
It was in Minneapolis.
Okay. Just you two or part of a bigger?
Yeah, part of a show.
What about Johnny Cash? Was he friendly?
Johnny Cash was awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll never forget Johnny Cash. I mean, I had the Highwaymen. We were doing that show in at the Mark of Moline. I'm talking to Lou Robbins, Johnny Cash's manager. And I said, Johnny's coming on strong in the college market. You should probably try and explore that. If I was you, I would do it. He asked me how I'd go about doing it. And I gave him Rick Rubin's number. I gave him Alex Chilton's number. And I gave him Ron Gowdy's number and said, any one of these three guys. Now, Ron Gowdy was a dear friend of mine. He's no longer with us, and neither is Alex, as far as that goes. Ron was the president of Restless Records. They ended up getting a hold of Rick Rubin, and out came Johnny Cash's Americana record. But what happened that night was, after I had my talk with Mr. Robbins, he leaves and comes back about 5 minutes later and says, "Hey, Jack, there's somebody here who really wants to meet you." I said, "Okay, Luke." I turned, there's the man in black. There's Johnny Cash standing right behind me. And he goes, "And I really want to thank you for your input and, working the show and this and that." But he was just a wonderful cat. And I felt privileged, So I got that picture of the man in black wearing blue jeans. We did, we call it March Metal Meltdown. And the first one did great. So I booked the following year. Well, Bruce Springsteen was going on a national stadium tour. And he rented out the venue to bring his stadium sound and light system in to rehearse for the stadium tour. Bruce and his band stayed at the same hotel that we did, which was right across the street. They had hired like 36 stagehands to come in, tear down, and then wait a couple of days for our show to run, then come back and set it up. And I said, "Hey, why don't you let me rent your PA system? Or let's cut a deal with your PA system so you don't have to take it down and set it up, and it'll save you 4 days of rehearsal." They loved the idea, and we struck a deal where I'd give the sound man, the light man, and monitor engineer $250 a day for 2 days. That's $1,500. And I was able to cancel my my sound and lights for that particular set. That saved me $9,000. Plus, all the bands got to play on Springsteen's system. I mean, the stadiums, and I'm sure most of these acts have never played on a system like that before or ever will. It was like, boom, It worked out great for me. So when the show was over and, we tore down, Springsteen started rehearsing the next day. And I walked in, I still had some t-shirts left. So I walked in, I spiffed the crew with a shirt, and I swagged the band. I turn around, I'm walking out, and all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, what's his name?" And someone said, "Jack." "Hey, Jack, hold up." I turn around, and it's Bruce Springsteen. Jumps off the stage, runs up to me and says, "Hey, man, you got one in a XL?" I said, "Sure, here you go." Boom. Now, how cool is that to have Bruce, and he put it on, how cool is that to have Bruce Springsteen wearing a shirt with my name on it?
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's a fan of you. That's what it means.
Keanu Reeves played Metalfest 6.
What did he play? Was he in a band? I didn't know that.
He had a band called Dog Star.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to, his guitar player was the leader of the band, a guy named Jay Davies. And I think I was Huntington Beach. I flew out to meet him and Keanu and cut a deal for Metalfest. This is shortly after Bill and Ted. So they hit the stage and just got pelted by beer cups. Just boom. And he loved it.
It's authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. Keanu was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, you must have had a lot of security. I know. I mean, there's a lot of stories of people showing up to those metal and punk shows with bottles and glass, all types of stuff.
Yeah, we made sure that we wouldn't allow glass on the floor.
Yeah.
Or by the show. Yeah, we're very, very conscious of liabilities. Yeah, I did Tom Jones at the auditorium. Great show. When it was done, we went bar hopping. We went to Angelo's because Tom had been there before. And then after we left Angelo's, we went to a strip club. We went to Ricky's on State. Yeah, and all the girls just crowded around him, Yeah, I remember Paul, the owner, grabs a bottle of champagne, because that's all Tom would drink was champagne. He said, "You think I could get $50 for this?" And Tony Travato, who was one of my closest friends, was also my production manager, said, "If you charge him anything, that'll be so low rent." So Paul goes, "Okay, well, give it to him, but make sure it's on the house from me." Okay. We had an after party at my place, in my apartment at Prostate Towers. And I ended up having to kick everybody out at like 5:30 in the morning because I had a show the next day. We had to load people in. "Tom, you got to go."
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah, that doesn't happen all that often to him, but
No.
you got to go. Yeah.
Hopefully, I didn't take it personally.
I'm sure it didn't. I'm sure he was dead tired anyway. But, a couple of the girls went with him. And I got to go to sleep for an hour.
Do you ever do any rap or hip hop, actually, out of curiosity? Because you mentioned, is that where you kind of
Yeah.
start?
Oh, yeah. No, I've done Tupac.
Wow.
I've done Dr. Dre. I've done Snoop Dogg. I've done Wu-Tang Clan. I've done Ice-T 7 times. I've done Ice Cube. Yeah, I've actually done quite a bit.
I guess, was there any genre that was just like, it's not possible or it was difficult for you compared to the others, or it's the same?
No, it's really, it's all the same when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
Doing a stadium show is the same thing, just on a grander scale than doing a band in your high school. You got to have the venue and the stage, the band, the sound and lights, your advertising, your tickets. It's all just on a bigger scale. The fans don't care if you make money or not.
Sure.
I remember one guy comes up to me, says, "You got the coolest job on earth. How can I do it? How can I get in there?" I said, "Get out your checkbook. You can do it now."
Well, yeah. So what I was going to ask you that. What advice would you give to someone who wants to? Any sincere advice that you'd give to someone who's really considering doing shows at that scale?
Well, the first show I ever did, I had no money. I was working in an outdoor theater, for crying out loud. But I got a credit card and I maxed it out. And that's how I started.
Yeah, risk is part of the business, I think.
It's all a crapshoot. It's all a gamble.
Yeah.
High risk, high reward. But when I got going, the average concert ticket was like, I remember doing the Birds. It was like, $3.50 a ticket. You're not going to get rich. But back then, crowds were more supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could do something like that and you'd get 700 people to a show instead of 200 people, And
I'm excited to read about it in your book because it's hard to even keep track of all the different people you crossed paths with. But hopefully, when you have the time and you're kind of, diligently thinking back and maybe just looking at the names of everyone, you'll have kind of all those stories laid out. So that'd be great.
Yeah. I've got 54 years of show files, tapes, contracts,
Wow.
pictures, everything, I had made some really close friends. Gene Clark from the Birds, for instance.
Yeah.
Gino and I were very tight. Randy California from Spirit and I were close.
Yeah, it's great that it sounds like you also had a feeling for a lot of the music and those acts. And the fact you kept all of it, I think, is a testament to how much, you cared about it.
Well, it's right now it's a lot of clutter in my basement.
Oh.
But,
Get it all scanned. Definitely want that. Especially the Badfinger stuff. Start with that. I'll just inject my bias.
Badfinger is my favorite band of all time.
That says a lot, given every act that we've talked about. They really left an impression on you.
Well, we were close.
Yeah.
We were close. Tommy and Bobby and Mike and Joey. Joey, I love Joey. Yeah, I never really knew Peter. Our paths only crossed once. Well, Gigi Young was a shock rocker. I owned a nightclub called the Odd Rock Cafe. Okay, the Odd Rock got its name when I was managing the Exploited. We were doing some shows we did a show at Irving Plaza in New York City, and Waddy Buchan, the lead singer of the band, wanted to go to the Hard Rock, but he's from Scotland, and that deep Scottish accent, when he'd say Hard Rock, came out as Odd Rock. And I think, God, that's a great name for a venue. So now the Odd Rock was named one of the coolest clubs in America in 1989 by Rolling Stone magazine. Yeah, it said, dark, crowded, and musty. Sooner or later, everybody plays here. And everybody did play there. I mean, we're talking, Faith No More, Jane's Addiction, Alex Chilton, Bo Diddley, The Ventures, just on and on and on and on. Everybody played it, Yeah, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anyway, I mean, for the 3 years it was there, Johnny Thunders, all types of music. Anyway, I had booked this act for $400, G.G. Allen and the Toilet Rockers. Okay. And he was a shock rocker, known for shoving a microphone up his. So I put him, and the opening act I got was from Kenosha, Wisconsin, Beautiful Bert and the Crotch Crickets.
Nice pairing.
Yeah. And a match made in heaven. Anyway, yeah, Bert knew that Gigi was going to shove a microphone up his. So Bert tries to one-up him and shoves a cactus up his.
God.
And when he pulled it out, it's like bleeding all over the place. And Gigi's not going to get outdone. So Gigi gets on stage early and starts doing a jig, then squats and takes a dump on the stage.
God.
Then rolls around in it, sucks it up, spits it out at the audience. His drummer, catches him off guard, smells it, throws up all over himself, gets up, walks out the back door, leaving his drum kit behind.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. And the crowd's running out the door going, and
there was still an audience at this point, huh?
Oh, there were people who loved him.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
He's sucking it up and spitting at the crowd. And you had some guys that just, So wow. I got a $2,000 fine. He got a $500 disorderly conduct fine. And we went to court. My lawyer, John Baker, was just brilliant.
What were you fined for, though? It's not like you told him to do that.
No, I know. No, it was having a lewd act on my premises. It could have cost me my license.
Wow.
But we went in there, and John took the stand that it wasn't some guy taking a dump and throwing it at the fans. No, it was an art form, scatology.
Well.
And we proved that it was in fact an art form. So the case against Gigi was dropped, and my fines were dropped. I'll never forget. I get up and I high five John, and I'm jogging out the back of the court. And I think Mike Anderson, that's who Channel 12 had covering it. He goes, well, Jack, what's next? I said, I'm going to Disney World.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you never practiced that art form again?
No, we never did scatology again. No. I remember doing a show in Green Bay at the Riverside Ballroom with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And their encore was always a song called The Sock, where the guys would come out with just a sock on their unit. Well, their sax player's sock fell off. Oof. And they had Riverside had a rent-a-cop that they hired for security. And I went and I told the guys, there was a football field next to the Riverside. And the guys were I told them to run there and hop in Mike's SUV and then just have the bus driver head out of town. But Anthony Kiedis took off slower than everybody else. And this rent-a-cop was, looked like he just came out of the Olympics, just and did a flying tackle on Anthony. Wow. So next thing you know, I'm trying to get him released. I go, Marge, the woman who owned the place, if this gets out, you can kiss your Friday night fish fries goodbye. And she finally gave in and did not press charges, so they let Anthony Kiedis go. Another one that got busted and didn't come to Milwaukee for years was Green Day. There was this cop who was a fanboy, and we wouldn't let him in the dressing room. Because the dressing room is really off limits to everybody. I don't care if you're a cop or not. If you don't belong there, you stay out. So he got all his undies in a bundle, and when the show was over, he arrested Billy Joe Armstrong for dropping his pants in front of the audience and warning the crowd.
Wow.
Yeah. So I spent the next few hours, because we had the next show. We did Milwaukee, and we did the Mark of Moline, and then we did Chicago.
It's similar to, didn't that happen to Jim Morrison back in the day? That's a famous story too, right? Almost ended his career.
In Miami, that's right, for Morrison.
I mean, that's easily another episode. Unless you have any other cereal boxes or anything you want to show and tell, I think we can probably, call that part 2.
All right.
Okay.
If you think there's something there for a part 3,
Yeah.
I'm down with it.